Louisiana has long been known for its music, culture, food, and deep Southern history. But behind the celebrations and famous streets lies another reality few people fully see. From the streets of New Orleans and Baton Rouge to smaller cities like Bogalusa and Shreveport, law enforcement agencies have spent years battling violent gangs, drug trafficking crews, federal RICO organizations, and deadly street wars that have left entire communities living in fear. In this documentary, we break down some of the most dangerous gang indictments and criminal investigations across Louisiana, from the Glock Boys in New Orleans, to federal drug pipelines in Bogalusa, to violent crews operating in Baton Rouge and Shreveport. These cases reveal how social media, rap beefs, retaliation deletions, guns, narcotics, and organized crime have transformed neighborhoods across the state. We'll examine the rise and fall of gangs accused of deletions, robberies, carjackings, fentanyl trafficking, and racketeering conspiracies, while also looking at the massive law enforcement operations built to dismantle them. These are real cases, real indictments, and real stories showing how deep the violence and gang activity has become throughout Louisiana.
3NG gang, also based uptown. Two men are still on the run, however, Kentrell Hickerson and Kevin Lynch. WDSU anchor Rachel Wolf tells us more about the DA's plans and what public defenders are saying about the case.
We will use every weapon in our arsenal to bring them to justice.
Orleans Parish District Attorney Leon Canizero was firm as he described a 30-count racketeering indictment against 20 men in the 3NG gang. He says the group conspired to distribute illegal drugs and used violence to gain and maintain control over the area where it operated near 3rd Street in South Galvez.
They don't show any breaks to the people of this community. We're going to give them no breaks either.
Authorities say the 3NG gang is responsible for at least 10 in the last 5 years.
Magnolia Shorty, born Renetta Lowe, got her stage name from the late rapper Magnolia Slim, who was also from the Magnolia housing development. The rapper, known as the Queen of Bounce, was discovered by Brian Birdman Williams and came onto the music scene in the 1990s. The 28-year-old's most recent project included a collaboration with New Orleans high school student Courtney Hart. This song, My Boy, helped the teen land a record deal with Jive Records. Local DJ Wild Wayne says these collaborations were Magnolia Shorty's specialty. He doubts she was the intended target when she was shot. She and an unidentified male were gunned down around 12:30 Monday in the Georgetown apartment complex on Morrison Road.
The 3NG gang, short for Third and Galvez, rose to prominence in the early 2000s from the tough streets of Central City, New Orleans. Born out of poverty and crime around the former Calliope housing projects, Third and Galvez quickly became a violent and feared group, dominating drug sales and enforcing its rule through brutality. Their name, tied to their home turf, became synonymous with fear as they fought and defeated rival groups like the Calliope Porch Boys, eventually taking control of large swaths of the Hoffman Triangle. Led by figures like Kentrell Black Hickerson, Third and Galvez was notorious for using deadly violence to protect its open-air drug markets. The gang's activities went beyond street-level dealing. They orchestrated deletions, intimidated witnesses, and sparked deadly rivalries with other gangs, most notably the 110ers from the 10th and 11th wards. The feud between 3NG and the 110ers turned into a bloody war that devastated communities. In 2015, several members were indicted under a new umbrella known as the 39ers, a violent alliance between 3NG and the G-Strip gang from the 9th Ward. The 39ers RICO indictment included charges for deletions, drug trafficking, and witness killings. Among the most infamous crimes tied to the gang were the demise of bounce music legend Magnolia Shorty and the assassination of federal informant Michael Marshall. Trials in 2017 led to sweeping convictions. 10 defendants were found guilty. Several were sentenced to life in federal prison. State prosecutors also secured convictions against 3NG figures, including Hickerson, who was convicted on drug conspiracy charges in 2019. Other gang members received life sentences for the demise of toddler Kira Holmes. By 2020, with nearly all its leadership either dead or in prison, 3rd and Galvez had been effectively dismantled. While some violence and remnants of 3rd and Galvez influence lingered, especially in the form of younger affiliates and revenge deletions, Central City began to experience relief.
Tonight, WDSU has obtained grand jury indictment documents identifying 4 alleged members of a notorious gang prosecutors say is responsible for several high-profile crimes, including murder. But these 4 individuals, police say, are just part of a larger effort to track the Glock Boys gang and shut down its operations.
Carlos Taylor, who police say broke out of the Juvenile Justice Center and carjacked a woman, is now indicted for his alleged role in a shooting.
This is an organized criminal network.
These 4 people have been indicted by a grand jury accused of terrorizing the streets of New Orleans.
This dangerous street gang has made headlines in the recent years for a number of coordinated violent attacks.
The district attorney's office says Davon Davis, Jomar Walsh, Carlos Taylor, and Shante Mark are all affiliated with the Glock Boys, a gang prosecutors say is notorious. The indictment pins 3 of the suspects at the Shamrock Bar in September, alleging they played a part in a shooting that. The indictment also alleges Carlos Taylor was allegedly involved in an armed robbery in August. Less than 2 weeks later, he was arrested for his alleged role in a shooting. After that, Taylor escaped from court and allegedly carjacked a woman and was on the run for days. He was captured in Baton Rouge. Gangs like the Glock Boys are no longer centralized in one location, and now prosecutors rely heavily on social media and other technology.
News now as the New Orleans woman accused of a mother of 4 goes before a magistrate judge. 24-year-old Shante Mark is now being held on $1 million bond on a charge of second-degree. The magistrate commissioner says he expects Mark to also be charged with aggravated battery. Mark is accused in the fatal shooting of 29-year-old Raven Francis early Sunday morning. Outside the Shamrock Bar and Grill, the New Orleans Fire Department shuts the bar down over code violations.
Inspectors with the New Orleans Fire Department says that they found numerous violations at the popular Mid-City bar, and they say that the inspection, which took place after this weekend's shooting and killing of a mother of 4 outside of the bar, was routine.
In a major blow to street-level gang violence in New Orleans, 4 alleged members of the notorious Glock Boys gang were indicted in December 2024, facing a slew of charges. The indictment, announced by Orleans Parish District Attorney Jason Williams, named Davon Twin Davis, Jomar Gliz Walsh, Carlos Los Taylor, and Shante Mark as key players in the Glock Boys' violent crime spree that terrorized neighborhoods across both Orleans and Jefferson parishes between July and September 2024. At the heart of the indictment is a deadly shooting that occurred on September 1, 2024, at the Shamrock Bar. Prosecutors allege that Davis, Walsh, and Taylor were involved in the brazen attack, where Raven Francis met her demise and injured 4 others in a hail of bullets. Surveillance and witness accounts point to a planned and targeted act of violence carried out in a crowded bar with no regard for innocent lives. Authorities believe the shooting was connected to ongoing gang conflicts, with the Glock Boys actively asserting control through intimidation and violence. Carlos Los Taylor was also implicated in a separate armed robbery that took place in August 2024. In a dramatic twist, Taylor later escaped custody, only to allegedly carjack a woman in Jefferson Parish while on the run. He was eventually recaptured in Baton Rouge, bringing an end to a manhunt that drew regional media attention and further highlighted the gang's capacity for chaos. District Attorney Williams described the Glock Boys as more than just a loosely affiliated group of young criminals. Instead, he portrayed them as a highly organized and dangerous criminal network, utilizing social media to flaunt illegal weapons, threaten rivals, and coordinate criminal activity. We are seeing a new era of gang behavior where violence is committed for likes, views, and online status, Williams said at a press conference announcing the indictment.
Officers are picking up the shell casing markings. The scene is starting to quiet down somewhat, but just moments ago, it was a very active scene here in the St. Roch neighborhood. Investigators are telling us they're still trying to piece together the who and the why this happened. But here's what we know so far. Sometime after about 4:30 this afternoon, two men were sitting in an SUV here at the corner of Elysian Fields and North Miro Street when another car pulled up alongside them and opened fire. The two men that were sitting in the car, one was a 30-year-old man. He was shot multiple times. He died on the way to the hospital. The other, the passenger, was 36 years old. He was shot once in the arm. He is in stable condition at University.
Police and prosecutors in the city of New Orleans announced the indictment and convictions of two different gangs in the city of New Orleans. We've all heard about the Ride or Die gang. Big gang, a lot of arrests in the last couple of years. Today, numerous convictions. 3 of those members were convicted, 9 others pled guilty. The U.S. Attorney and police chief say this is a step in the right direction to keeping the city of New Orleans safe. There's been an uptick in violent crime this week in the city of New Orleans with numerous shootings. But today, the mayor, the police chief, and the U.S. Attorney announced the convictions and indictments of numerous gang members. Members of the Ride or Die gang have all been convicted. Some pleaded guilty, others were convicted at trial.
In a sweeping federal indictment unsealed Friday, authorities charged 12 alleged members of a violent New Orleans gang known as Ride or Die with a host of serious offenses. At the center of the case is 21-year-old Deloyd "Puggy" Jones, named by prosecutors as the leader of the organization. He, along with Byron "Big Baby" Jones, 23, and Sidney "Duda Man" Patterson, 22, are accused of being the gang's principal enforcers and drug distributors. According to federal prosecutors, the Ride or Die gang operated as a violent criminal enterprise, using firearms and intimidation to control territory and eliminate rivals. Among the most chilling accusations are several deletions linked directly to the gang's activities. Deloyd Jones is charged in connection with the demise of Rodney Coleman in November 2010 and Devin Hutton in January 2011. He and Sidney Patterson were also charged with the demise of Corey Blue that same month. Meanwhile, both Byron Jones and Sidney Patterson faced charges for the February 2013 demise of Travis Arnold. If convicted, Deloyd Jones, Byron Jones, and Sidney Patterson each face mandatory life sentences. The other 9 defendants face up to 20 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release, and could be fined up to $250,000. If convicted, Deloyd Jones, Byron Jones, and Sidney Patterson each face mandatory life sentences. The other 9 defendants face up to 20 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release, and could be fined up to $250,000. Following the federal indictment of the Ride or Die gang in New Orleans, all 12 defendants were convicted and sentenced for their roles in the gang's violent and drug-related operations between 2007 and 2013. Deloyd "Puggy" Jones, Byron "Big Baby" Jones, and Sidney "Duda Man" Patterson were each found guilty on multiple charges, including racketeering, drug trafficking, and deletion. The remaining 9 defendants were sentenced to terms ranging from 48 to 121 months.
May 29, 2012, a spray of gunfire on Simon Boulevard left Shawana Pierce and Brianna Allen dead, and this community forever changed. Almost 3 years later, a jury returned guilty verdicts for prosecutors say Damon Sandifer, Sam Newman, and Tyron Harden were gang members uptown who opened fire on street rivals but left 2 dead in the crossfire. Brianna was at a birthday party, a celebration of life, when she lost her own. And Shawana, who family members call Nani, was on her way to return a rental car when she was struck by a stray bullet.
In May 2013, the Orleans Parish District Attorney's Office announced a sweeping 51-count state racketeering indictment against 15 alleged members of the 110ers. a violent street gang operating across New Orleans' central city. The 110ers function as an umbrella group formed by merging crews from the 10th and 11th wards. Their reign of violence between 2010 and 2013 included drug trafficking, armed robberies, witness intimidation, and at least 10 deletions, including the high-profile May 2012 drive-by shooting when 5-year-old Brianna Allen and 33-year-old Shawana Pierce met their demise during a child's birthday party. That horrific crime galvanized the city and led to intensified law enforcement pressure on street gangs. Investigators tied the gang to a broader pattern of turf wars, drive-bis, and a code of silence. Key figures in the indictment included Rico Newman, Lil Rico, believed to be the gang's organizer, Demond Lil D. Sandifer, a feared triggerman, Antonio Big Rico Johnson, Sam Newman, Lil Sam, and shooters Stin, Nan Na Guillory, and Tyranny Man Harden, who were implicated in the Brianna Allen shooting. One female defendant, John Sticks Jones, surrendered herself with legal representation the day after the indictment was unsealed, highlighting how even female associates were charged for their roles in aiding the gang's operations. As the case progressed, several defendants took plea deals, while others, including Sandifer, Sam Newman, and Harden, went to trial in late 2014. In January 2015, all three were convicted on racketeering and multiple counts. They received life without parole, plus decades of additional time for gang-related sentencing enhancements. Guillory was tried separately and also received life for his role in the child's demise. Others like Rico Newman and Joshua Pittman pleaded guilty to lesser charges such as manslaughter or conspiracy and received sentences between 15 and 25 years. By 2016, most of the defendants had either been convicted at trial or resolved their cases through plea agreements. Notably, Joseph Duman Bienemy, who was already serving life for an unrelated deletion, had his racketeering charge dropped in exchange for waiving future appeals, an example of how the DA strategically managed case outcomes.
Due to the threat of the coronavirus, Glenn McCormick was released from Orleans Parish Jail Thursday. He had been awaiting trial as one of the ringleaders of the notorious drug gang known as D-Block. Here's the ankle monitor McCormick was wearing Sunday when he was cut down by a hail of bullets. Matt Dennis's company, A2I, put on the bracelet.
He was set to be free and to do as he pleased. And what he chose to do was frequent the area he is known to frequent in his entire criminal history.
Electronic monitoring data obtained exclusively by Channel 4 shows that upon his release, the 33-year-old McCormick did not go to his home on the West Bank.
And he goes immediately back to his old drug stomping grounds where he is accused of all of these drug crimes.
With most people following stay-at-home orders, records show McCormick visited the Dumaine Street drug hotspot every day since his release.
And he frequents that place the entire time he's out.
When McCormick was first indicted in 2018, his bail was set at $1 million. Judge Darrell Durbany dropped that to $150,000 more than a year ago, then down to a free signature bond with a curfew last week.
So when he released him with no restrictions other than the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. curfew, basically signed his death warrant.
Well, Scott, the gang is called the 6th Ward D-Block, and District Attorney Leon Canizero says the 11 men who make up the gang have terrorized an area of the 6th Ward near Dumaine and Broad Street for years. Right now, 10 men are in custody. All are charged with racketeering. The men, as you see here, are Lance Prince, Sheldon Jackson, Mark Quinn Lewis, Blake Ricks, Nathaniel Brown, Torin Duhon, Jamal Howard, Terrell Muse, Cecil Martin, and Glenn McCormick. On the run is 20-year-old Darnell Ellis. Leon Canizero says the men operated in the 2600 block of Dumaine Street. Canizero says this is the first time in more than 10 years that a local prosecutor has used the racketeering statute against the gang, meaning that they can bring up all of these charges, all of these crimes that they're charged with doing in court.
In May 2018, A Louisiana state grand jury indicted 9 members of the so-called D-Block gang following a year-long undercover investigation into a drug trafficking operation centered around the 2500 to 2600 block of Domain Street in Mid-City, New Orleans. The indictment, announced by then District Attorney Leon Canizaro and the NOPD, marked the culmination of Operation Wipeout, which aimed to shut down the gang's open-air drug market. By May 2018, authorities had identified at least 9 suspects involved in a multi-drug trafficking conspiracy, using several stash houses and vehicles to sell. Some members even appeared in music videos bragging about their criminal activity. The indicted members ranged in age from their early 20s to 30s and included Dwayne Jenkins, Gabriel Bell, and Brian Lott, identified as primary dealers already incarcerated on unrelated charges at the time the indictment was unsealed. Other notable figures were Taryn Blackman, Glenn Spot McCormick, Derek Youngboy Brumfield, and Lawrence Lowe Conway, all arrested during coordinated raids. The gang primarily operated in the Treme, Mid-City corridor, and authorities were cleared to distinguish this D-Block from a separate Algiers-based group of the same name that had been dismantled years earlier. The majority of the defendants ultimately entered guilty pleas. By late 2018, 11 D-Block members had pleaded guilty to racketeering or related drug offenses. Blackman, McCormick, Brumfield, and Conway were sentenced to terms ranging from 10 to 15 years. Jenkins and others who were already incarcerated had additional years added to their sentences. Notably, Glenn Spot McCormick, believed to be one of the gang's top leaders, was released after serving his sentence, but was fatally shot not long after his release, in what law enforcement sources believe was a targeted retaliation tied to lingering gang rivalries. His death underscored the ongoing danger and violence associated with the crew, even after the case had officially closed.
Well, this morning, students at Edna Carr High School returned to class after 2 people were in a deadly shooting right outside the campus.
Yeah, the gunfire broke out just as the 2 victims were said to be going to the basketball game that was happening there. And again, that caused mass chaos between parents and students and everybody inside that gym.
Now, New Orleans Police Department tells us they responded to calls of shots fired around 8 o'clock here in the 3300 block of Huntley Drive. Police found an unresponsive man who'd been shot multiple times lying in the grass in front of the school. He died here at the scene. A second man with multiple gunshot wounds was taken to the hospital for treatment, but he later died from his injuries. So far, the ages and identities of the 2 victims have not been released. And while investigators do not know of a motive at this time, Superintendent Michael Harrison says they are looking for a silver 4-door sedan. The driver of that vehicle fled the scene after the shooting. Police believe that a person or someone inside of that car, or several people inside that car, might have opened fire on the 2 victims. For parents and people in the community who rushed to the scene, coming up on such an active and scary, tragic scene was something that was unreal to them to see.
NOPD officers think the indictment of 3 people is just the beginning of a crackdown on gang violence in Central City. They say Randy Calvin, James Alexander, and Chance Skipper have been indicted with charges of distribution. The indictment alleges the men of conspiring to distribute on behalf of the Bird Gang.
More importantly, this investigation is still ongoing, and we do expect more indictments to be forthcoming on their associates. The New Orleans Police Department takes gang violence and gun violence very seriously. We told the community, if you have information, call us, and they did, and we were able to make these arrests, and we have more indictments forthcoming.
Amid the revelry of Mardi Gras, gunfire and chaos.
You could see the smoke, clearly see the smoke of someone firing the gun.
It sounded like a big roll of fireworks, non-stop shots. I had my 2-year-old and my 10-year-old with me, and my mom. I just grabbed everybody and got on the ground.
Police say they found these 2 weapons at the scene, plus a 3rd weapon. They also collected other evidence at the scene. Authorities say it wasn't immediately clear if the gunfire was random or if the shooters were aiming for the victims or each other.
The officers chased the individuals, the perpetrators, and were able to apprehend them about a block and a half away from here.
2 suspects have been taken into custody. a 19-year-old and an 18-year-old, both from New Orleans.
The Bird Gang, a violent Central City street crew rooted in the Magnolia housing projects, was the focus of a major federal racketeering case that began in 2019. Initially indicted for drug and firearm conspiracies, the case expanded in August 2021 with a superseding indictment charging 11 members under the federal RICO statute. The indictment covered criminal activity from 2014 to 2020 and stemmed from a years-long investigation into a deadly feud between the Bird Gang and their rivals, the Ghost Gang, based out of the Calliope projects. Bird Gang members were accused of running a drug trafficking operation while using violence to control territory and retaliate against rivals. Key charges included RICO conspiracy, drug trafficking, firearms offenses, and multiple violent crimes in aid of racketeering Vicar, including 2 capital-eligible murders. 3 defendants, Taryn Funky Williams, Tyrone Six Bovia, and Yovanta Dutt Dolman, were charged with the demise of Winston Jackson and Lawrence Williams. Others, like James Pooh Alexander and Timothy Math Jackson, were identified as high-ranking members or leaders. The indictment listed over 50 overt acts, including block party shootings, playground drive bis, and a 2018 shootout near Edna Carr High School. Prosecutors used evidence such as ballistics, wiretaps, and social media videos in which members flaunted weapons and bragged about crimes. By 2023, most defendants, including Chance Skipper, Ernest Thomas, Samuel Morton, Alan Gray, and Randy Calvin, had pleaded guilty, receiving expected sentences of 15 to 25 years. Tim Jackson pleaded guilty in 2025 and admitted to orchestrating gang hits. The remaining 3 defendants, Williams, Bovia, and Dolman, went to trial in late 2023, charged with double deletion and facing mandatory life sentences. As of April 2025, the trial was nearing its conclusion, with prosecutors expected to secure convictions based on cooperating witnesses, forensic evidence, and detailed gang communications.
Still very much an active scene. Take a look behind me, and we should point out this home that's being raided right now is the exact home where little 5-year-old Breonna Allen was shot and killed as part of a drive-by 1 year ago. Since about 4 o'clock today, about 40 members of the New Orleans Police Department, state police, and federal law enforcement officials who make up the MAG, or Multi-Agency Gang Task Force, have been out here. Check out this video. They had the helicopter in the air and they had officers on the ground. Numerous people, about a half dozen that we can count, were taken into custody and driven off. Details are still coming in, but a city official does confirm to me that this roundup deals with an earlier indictment from today, a federal indictment involving members of the Allen family for alleged drug dealing at or around this location. We caught up with some of the people who live in this house or who know members of this family. They were not very pleased that this raid was going on. Here's what they told us.
It's just a family member told me that they went and got my baby off his job, and he don't really be into nothing. He did wrong, it's true, and he pays society for it. He go to work faithfully. He don't be out here doing nothing. Now all of a sudden he doing right, got a job, obey his parole officers and stuff, and then they go on his job and just take him off his job like that. And we just lost my grandmother yesterday.
We should point out Simon Bolivar closed all the way from Calliope, the Pontchartrain Expressway, to Martin Luther King. You can see behind me still a lot of cops out here, and over here a lot of people in the neighborhood have gathered to watch what's going on. You heard reaction from some of them, but pretty big scene out here in the Central City neighborhood right now as police from this MAG, or Multi-Agency Gang Unit, are still on the scene going through the house. Once again, still very fluid, but we do know that they arrested probably a half dozen people, and it does stem from an earlier federal indictment from today involving drugs in this area. We'll have much more coming up at 10 o'clock. Called the YMM Gang, numerous members of that gang were indicted today in federal court. The U.S. Attorney tells us this sends an example to people in New Orleans.
If you are charged with a federal gun violation, that means that you are going to be in prison from the time that you are arrested. That means that if you are convicted, and we oftentimes get convictions, you are going to be serving that time not anywhere close to Louisiana, but in some far-flung regions of this country.
The Young Melf Mafia, a violent street gang operating in New Orleans' Central City neighborhood, was dismantled through one of the city's most significant federal RICO prosecutions. The gang, based around the former Melpomene housing projects, was heavily involved in drug trafficking, shootings, and a deadly rivalry with the 110ers gang. In August 2014, federal authorities issued an initial indictment charging 11 members with drug and firearms offenses. A year later, in August 2015, a superseding indictment expanded the case to 31 counts, adding federal racketeering charges and 5 murders. Among the most notable deletions were the deaths of Vinnie Smith and Deshaun Hartford, allegedly 110ers affiliates, and the brazen highway shooting of innocent bystander Travis Thomas. The case went to trial in June 2017, resulting in convictions for 5 members. Lionel "Lot" Allen, considered the gang's leader and a second-generation gang member, was sentenced to life plus 35 years for RICO, firearm conspiracy, and 3 deletions. Jawan Titty Forsha and Dedrick Roy Keelan also received life sentences for their roles in multiple killings. 2 others, Brian Scott and Delwyn Pooh McLaren, received 20 and 16 years, respectively, for drug and firearms conspiracy charges. All appeals were denied in 2020, solidifying the sentences. Several members pleaded guilty before trial. Jacoby Coboyd received a 40-year sentence, while Alfred Al Cobbins and Sean Gunnar Grayson received 21 and 22.5 years, respectively.
As we first told you at 5 o'clock, New Orleans police responded to the Garden District after reports of a shooting. Now they believe the crime actually started in Central City, then ended near the intersection of Harmony and Britannia in the Garden District, where an abandoned car and a victim was found.
The NOPD is investigating 2 crime scenes tonight, one here in Central City and the other one in the Garden District. They believe both incidents are connected. Now they're trying to piece together what exactly happened. Shell casings litter the ground on MLK and Ferret Streets Thursday night, the site where the NOPD believes marked the beginning of a shooting investigation spanning 2 neighborhoods. Sometime before 5 p.m., police were called to a shooting here at this location. Not long after that, police got a call about an abandoned silver Toyota Avalon at the corner of Britannia and Harmony, just a block off St. Charles Avenue. Police say it's the same car spotted at the shooting in Central City just moments before. A few feet away from the abandoned car, a man's body lays on the ground. The NOPD did not release the victim's name, but an EMS spokesperson tells Eyewitness News they believe the man was approximately 30 years old.
New Orleans prosecutors recently secured a sweeping racketeering indictment against 4 alleged members of the T-Block gang, also known as J Bucka Nation, a violent Central City crew accused of carrying out a citywide wave of shootings, carjackings, and armed robberies. The indictment, handed down by a special grand jury in Orleans Parish Criminal District Court, includes 26 charges and paints a picture of a criminal enterprise fueled by violence, retaliation, and social media bravado. Prosecutors allege the group operated as an organized gang from at least January 2018 until their arrests in 2019, basing their operations in the 3000 block of Toledano Street, near the former Magnolia housing development, now known as Harmony Oaks. The indictment links the crew to a series of high-profile crimes that rippled across New Orleans, including attempted deletions, armed carjackings, auto thefts, burglaries, and reckless high-speed chases. The 4 are accused of engaging in at least 10 attempted deletions and leveraging social media to mock rivals and flaunt their criminal activity. According to the indictment, the gang had ties to the Bird Gang and was embroiled in violent rivalries with groups like the Calliope Ghost Gang and Forever My Brother FMB. On August 27, 2018, Hartford allegedly participated in a drive-by shooting on South Liberty Street, and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard that left one person wounded. Prosecutors say Hartford later posted online to brag about the attack. Sparkman is also accused of opening fire on an Forever My Brother gang member on May 6, 2019, in the 3400 block of Louisa Street, supposedly in retaliation for prior taunts. Prosecutors say he later mocked the group on social media for a failed hit the day before, during which a 4-year-old Shih Tzu named Yasmin was accidentally deleted in New Orleans East. Just days later, on May 17th, Sparkman and 2 associates allegedly live-streamed a 15-minute video on Instagram from inside a carjacked Toyota Tundra, racing through city streets, brandishing firearms with 30-round extended clips, and continuing their taunts online. The group's violence allegedly escalated on May 23rd with the armed carjacking of a blue Maserati in Gerttown. A juvenile gang member reportedly forced the driver out at gunpoint before speeding away. Louisiana State Police later attempted to stop the vehicle on Lakeshore Drive, but it fled and was later found abandoned on Humanity Street. Investigators later spotted an Acura MDX linked to the Maserati carjacking at a gas station on Paris Avenue and Gentilly Boulevard. When approached, Alexander and Sparkman fled on foot, but were arrested after a short chase. Officers recovered 3 firearms during the arrest, including .40 caliber Glock stolen from the secured trunk of NOPD Commander Regina Williams' unmarked cruiser earlier that April. The indictment also recounts the violent death of 20-year-old Jerry Harris, a fellow T-Block member, who met his demise on March 28, 2019, during a botched attack on a rival gang on Ferret Street. Harris's body was later found abandoned in the Garden District near a stolen vehicle used in the shooting. Forensic evidence connected both Hartford and Sparkman to the attack. Hartford's DNA was found on a .45 caliber handgun recovered at the scene, while Sparkman's DNA was located on a black and white scream mask believed to have been worn during the assault. In a sweeping state racketeering case announced by Orleans Parish District Attorney Liam Canizaro, 9 members of a high-volume drug trafficking organization known as the Cross the Canal Gang were indicted. The group, based in New Orleans' 9th Ward, is accused of operating a large-scale narcotics ring, with several of the alleged members connected by blood or long-standing criminal relationships. Among them is Corey Chef Expose, 32, who authorities identify as a leader of the operation. Expose has an extensive criminal history, including a 2000 conviction for possession with intent to distribute, for which he served 5 years. In 2005, he was sentenced to 30 months as a repeat offender after pleading guilty to cocaine possession. More recently, he was convicted in March of attempted possession of 8 and is now awaiting sentencing under Louisiana's habitual offender statute, which could result in a much harsher penalty. Another central figure in the indictment is Bruce Bald Head Carter, 32, who has a documented criminal relationship with Corey Expose dating back over 14 years. Carter was convicted in 2004 of aggravated second-degree battery and sentenced to 7 years in prison. At the time of this indictment, he faced multiple pending charges, including possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, possession with intent to distribute heroin, possession of more than 28 grams of white girl, and illegal carrying of a weapon. The charges focus heavily on narcotics offenses, many involving substantial quantities of illegal drugs. The Orleans Parish District Attorney's Office announced racketeering indictments against 2 alleged street gangs, one known as the CTC Snake Gang, based in the lower 9th Ward. Prosecutors, working in partnership with New Orleans police and federal ATF agents, said both groups were involved in large-scale drug trafficking and violent criminal activity throughout the city. The CTC Snake Gang, named after the local nickname Cutthroat City, for the lower 9th Ward, is accused of dealing while using violence and intimidation to maintain control over their territory, specifically around Flood and Mary Streets. Many of the group's alleged crimes involve large quantities of narcotics, and several members are believed to be related. 10 of the 19 defendants named in the indictment are currently in custody. At the center of the case is Corey Chef Expose, 33, who prosecutors say led the CTC Snake Gang. Expose has a lengthy criminal history, including a 2000 conviction for possession with intent to distribute and a 2005 conviction for possession. In March, he was convicted on a separate charge of attempted possession from a 2009 arrest. Facing life imprisonment under the state's habitual offender law, Expose agreed to a flat 20-year sentence. However, he remains a defendant in the ongoing racketeering case. Bruce Carter has a prior conviction for aggravated second-degree battery in 2004, for which he served 7 years. Court records indicate a long-standing drug-related relationship between Carter and Corey Expose dating back over a decade. Several defendants were initially arrested in separate drug busts in early and mid-2012. So far, only one of the 9 indicted defendants has entered a guilty plea. Bilal Denley pleaded guilty shortly after the indictment and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. The remaining defendants are still awaiting trial.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Kyla Scott. Our top story tonight, a Baton Rouge rapper and known gang member has been arrested after an incident at Pecanland Mall. On Monday, officers say a male was brandishing a handgun in the mall and threatening to shoot. The incident was posted on social media. The suspect was identified as 22-year-old David Catherine. He's a known member of the Bleeder gang. Monroe police detectives worked with the Baton Rouge police to find and arrest Catherine. He was taken into custody and charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault with a firearm, riot, and illegal carrying of a weapon.
In May 2025, a high-profile arrest was made involving a member of Monroe's Bleeder gang, another local street gang. Surveillance footage on May 19, 2025, caught 22-year-old David Catherine, a Baton Rouge rapper known as Real Bleeder, brandishing a handgun and threatening to shoot people at Monroe's Pecanland Mall, 4700 Millhaven Road. Monroe detectives tracked Catherine to Baton Rouge, working with the BRPD. On May 21, 2025, BRPD arrested him on Monroe warrants. Catherine was charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault with a firearm, riot, and illegal carrying of a weapon.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for choosing Fox 14. I'm Nick Summer. Our top story this evening, a shooting near the Monroe Walmart today has left 2 people injured. Details are limited right now, but we do know the shooting happened around 2 this afternoon at the Murphy USA gas station near the Monroe Walmart. Police have confirmed that 2 men were shot and later taken to local hospitals for treatment. It also appears that a vehicle crashed into a gas station during the incident. Officers say that the shooting did not appear to be random.
Tariq Smith and Tristan Barber are now booked on 2 counts of attempted second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Jalen Webster, as we told you, was booked on Sunday on those same charges. Barber also had active arrest warrants for probation violations and attempted murder in 2 other shootings. Police are still searching for Roderick Brass and Calarius Owens. Detectives tell us all 4 suspects are YNN gang members. Police recovered multiple firearms used in the shooting. One of the firearms even linked to a homicide in Shreveport.
On March 29, 2024, a brazen drive-by shooting occurred at the Murphy Oil on Lamy Lane in Monroe, injuring 2 victims. This case was linked to the YNN gang feud. 2 rival gang members in a silver Chevrolet Cruze ambushed a vehicle, firing dozens of shots. The victim's car was hit at least 15 times and crashed into the gas station building, injuring an employee inside. 27 shell casings from 2 different handguns were recovered. Investigators learned the motive was personal. One victim had been dating the ex-fiancé of a YNN gang leader. Social media posts by gang leaders celebrating violence, "She a bleeder now, we can make her our bleed too," confirmed the revenge motive. Monroe detectives identified the getaway vehicle and suspects through license plate readers and social media tips. By April 2024, 2 YNN gang members were arrested. 23-year-old Terrorizing Cooter Double D Smith and Jalen Webster. Both were charged with multiple counts of attempted second-degree deletion and conspiracy to commit deletion. Investigators noted that both suspects' photos showed YNN gang tattoos. Police seized firearms linked to the shooting, one of which was tied to an unrelated homicide in Shreveport.
Meanwhile, Monroe Mayor Friday Ellis posting a statement onto social media about the arrest on Friday. He congratulated the agencies on their work and had this message for those who choose to commit crimes. It reads, quote, "This is what happens when you push violence and poison into our neighborhoods. We will not allow families in our city to live in fear. We will not allow gangs to control our streets, and we will never look the other way."
In June 2025, a multi-agency narcotics investigation in Ouachita Parish led to the arrest of 17 people on racketeering charges. The investigation, conducted by Metro Narcotics, the Monroe Police Department, and the Ouachita Parish Sheriff's Office, uncovered an organized criminal enterprise dubbed the Berg Jones Lane Gang. Officials reported that the gang operated out of a Jones Lane area in Monroe, engaging in drug trafficking and violent crimes under a racketeering framework. The 17 defendants were taken into custody on federal and state racketeering charges, which typically allege participation in a criminal network that commits illegal acts, such as drug distribution and violence, to benefit the group. On March 23, 2022, MPD responded to an Elm Street shooting in Monroe that involved two rival gangs. According to news reports, an argument escalated into gunfire between members of the YNN gang and another Monroe gang. Fortunately, no one was injured. Police vowed to arrest all participants. By early April 2022, 5 people were charged. Earlier that week, 3 suspects had already been arrested. On April 4, 2022, MPD arrested the remaining 2 wanted suspects, Justin Manyweather and Arthur Hollins. Both were charged with conspiracy to commit second-degree deletion and additional violent charges. Specifically, Manyweather was also charged with rioting and Hollins with assault by drive-by shooting. These arrests came after detectives pieced together videos and witness statements from the scene. The shooting was explicitly described by police as gang-related. Monroe PD highlighted that community tips and vigilant investigative work led to the arrests of all involved parties. In mid-2017, Monroe narcotics detectives busted an outlaw motorcycle gang operation. An anonymous tip alerted Metro Narcotics to bikers moving large quantities of drugs at 2 residences on University Avenue and Filial Avenue. Undercover surveillance confirmed heavy foot traffic by men wearing outlaw biker club vests. A traffic stop on Filial Avenue led to the arrest of 2 motorcyclists from California and Washington on marijuana possession and a stolen firearm charge. With search warrants for the 2 homes, Monroe SWAT stormed the locations. A total of 9 people were arrested, including local Monroe members and out-of-state affiliates of the gang. Police seized various drugs and 7 firearms, 2 reported stolen. Law enforcement identified the group as the Chosen Few Motorcycle Club, an international outlaw biker gang. All the arrested men were found wearing the gang's insignia, black leather vests with Chosen Few patches. The investigation revealed Joseph Hodges, a local Monroe man, was the chapter president. The raid also led to forfeiture of 9 motorcycles used by gang members. The ripple effects of these arrests stretch far beyond jail cells. In Monroe, each takedown of gang leaders or street crews offers a glimmer of hope that violence can be interrupted, that turf wars can give way to stability, that children can walk home safe. Yet the cycle remains relentless. New players step in, old alliances realign, and a city with so much history watches both its best and worst futures unfold.
Back in 2020, was found guilty Friday in Caddo District Court. 24-year-old DeVoris Antonio Hardy was convicted of negligent homicide for the shooting death of Jacoby Ware back on December 6, 2020. Now, Ware and a passenger arrived to a tobacco shop on the corner of Pines Road and West 70th Street when shots rang out. Hardy fled the scene afterwards, but was later found by local police.
A jury has found a man guilty of negligent homicide in the slaying of Jacoby Ware. The incident took place in December 2020, where DeVoris Hardy shot Ware from point-blank range in a parking lot of a Shreveport tobacco shop while Ware was in his vehicle. Now, Ware's passengers returned fire, injuring Hardy. Now, Hardy then fled to a nearby business where he was apprehended.
At 5, just in from Shreveport police, another arrest has been made in connection to a rolling gun battle that took place down a major Shreveport road. DeVoris Hardy is now the third person arrested, who police say was in a car firing at people in another car multiple times. Hardy was charged with illegal use of a firearm. This all taking place yesterday morning. A very busy strip in Shreveport. 2 others were arrested shortly after that gun battle ended at the intersection of Uri Drive and East Washington Street.
One of the most telling examples of Shreveport's gang violence is the case of DeVoris Antonio Hardy, a 23-year-old known gang affiliate whose criminal record drew both state and federal prosecution. In December 2020, 20-year-old Jacoby was shot and met his demise in Shreveport. A Caddo Parish grand jury later indicted Hardy for second-degree deletion in March 2021. Despite the severity of the charge, Hardy posted a $250,000 bond and was released pending trial. Less than a year later, on 14th March 2022, Hardy was involved in another violent incident. Police responded to reports of gunfire near Uri Drive and East Washington Street, where they discovered 2 shooting victims and a vehicle riddled with bullet holes. Hardy was located nearby in another car. Inside, officers recovered 6 spent shell casings. A short distance away, in the bed of a pickup truck, they found a Glock 40 caliber pistol. Ballistics testing confirmed the casings had been fired from that Glock. During questioning, Hardy admitted that earlier that day he had encountered a rival gang member in court and felt threatened. He claimed he borrowed a firearm from a friend's father, anticipating possible retaliation. According to Hardy, a car later pulled up and opened fire on him, prompting him to shoot back. As the vehicle fled, he conceded that the Glock found in the truck bed was the weapon he had used. This incident led to federal charges. In May 2022, Hardy was indicted for possession of a firearm while under a state indictment, a serious violation under federal law. Prosecutors argued he posed a clear danger to the community, and Hardy was ordered held without bond. Hardy's legal troubles culminated in 2 separate convictions. In August 2023, his state deletion trial resulted in a conviction for negligent homicide rather than second-degree deletion. He received the maximum sentence of 5 years in state prison. Then, on 22 February 2024, in federal court, Hardy was sentenced to 36 months imprisonment for the firearm offense. U.S. Attorney Brandon Brown summarized the case by calling Hardy a dangerous individual who has a callous disregard for human life. His trajectory, from a deletion indictment to a public shootout near an elementary school to illegal firearms possession, highlights how deeply gang rivalries fuel repeated cycles of violence in Shreveport.
According to legal documents obtained by KSLA, the gang members and associates are facing charges of conspiracy to commit wire fraud after they allegedly collaborated to falsify PPP and EIDL program loan applications.
Knowingly using false information or statements to complete said paperwork is a violation of federal law.
The defendant submitted fraudulent loan applications to banking institutions and received payments based on these fraudulent applications. The U.S. Attorney says the money was used for greed, personal gain, and used to carry out violent acts of crime.
What federal investigators have discovered is that gangs such as SOD are getting slightly more sophisticated when it comes to obtaining funds to operate.
In July 2023, U.S. Attorney Brandon B. Brown announced federal indictments against 24 members and associates of the Shreveport gang, Step or Die. Prosecutors allege the group exploited COVID-19 relief programs by filing fraudulent applications for economic injury disaster loans and Paycheck Protection Program (PPP) funds under the CARES Act. Instead of supporting businesses, the money was funneled into purchasing firearms and financing gang operations. Authorities estimate the defendants obtained between $20,000 and $200,000 per loan through the scheme. Of the 24 charged, 23 were arrested. Each defendant faces charges of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and wire fraud. If convicted, they could receive up to 20 years in prison, as well as fines of up to $250,000 and up to 3 years of supervised release. Brown emphasized that SOD already had a reputation for robberies, shootings, and deletions, and warned that this case demonstrates the new ways gangs are financing their criminal activity.
Members of the Block Boys gang were found guilty today by a federal judge. Prosecutors say they terrorized the Queensboro and Ingleside neighborhood for years. They are convicted of drugs and weapon charges. 4 others indicted for these same crimes have already pled guilty.
That's right, Jackie. The U.S. Attorney and the Shreveport Police Chief Ben Raymond is warning gang members, saying they're coming for you. Now, DeMarcus Morris, the leader of the Block Boys, was sentenced this week to more than 30 years in prison for conspiracy and distribution charges. Jimmy Durden Jr. and Gary McCain were also sentenced this week for their roles in the organized crime ring. All were convicted on drug trafficking and firearm offenses. These were the last of 8 to be sentenced.
You know, the biggest gang in Shreveport is the Shreveport Police Department, and you can't compete with us, and there's no need in trying. But if you're doing violent crime, if you're committing crimes, and you're preying on our citizens, we're after you.
In July 2017, a federal grand jury indicted 9 members of the Shreveport street gang known as the Block Boys, also called Get Money Boys, or GMB. The indictment charged them with a wide-ranging racketeer-influenced and corrupt organization's RICO conspiracy, along with multiple drug trafficking and weapons violations. According to prosecutors, from 2012 onward, the Block Boys operated as a violent criminal enterprise in the Queensboro and Ingleside neighborhoods. Investigators documented 66 separate overt acts tied to the conspiracy, ranging from shootings and drive-by attacks to threats, assaults, and robberies. These acts were allegedly carried out to expand the gang's control, protect its drug territory, and intimidate rivals. The indictment further revealed that the gang trafficked in large amounts of narcotics. Members are also accused of stockpiling firearms and using them openly in the community to commit violent crimes and instill fear. Prosecutors say the Block Boys frequently fired shots into cars and residences, carried out armed robberies, and even beat a jailhouse informant in an effort to silence potential witnesses. These acts of intimidation were a key part of maintaining the gang's influence and preventing cooperation with law enforcement. All 9 defendants identified by both name and nickname were arrested and charged with RICO conspiracy, multiple counts of drug distribution, firearms offenses, and violent crimes in aid of racketeering. The potential sentences were severe, ranging from 10 to 20 years on drug charges to life imprisonment on RICO and violent crime counts, along with substantial fines. As one sheriff involved in the case bluntly stated, the Block Boys were violent people. They will delete you if you don't respect them, underscoring the gang's brutal reputation and the level of threat they posed to the Shreveport community.
Well, in an effort to disrupt the flow of juvenile crime, Shreveport police launched Operation MO. There were 10 arrests in all. These are the teens who were arrested for violent or firearm-related offenses. Now, many are active gang members, according to police. They were booked into the Cano Juvenile Detention Center and the Shreveport City Jail. Also, officers seized 8 guns, some of them stolen, and more than $60,000.
In early March 2022, law enforcement in Shreveport launched a focused crackdown on youth gang affiliates. The operation, called Operation MO, was carried out by the Shreveport Police Department's Violent Crimes Abatement Team and the Warrants Unit in partnership with Juvenile Services. Over the course of March 1st, 2 officers arrested 10 juveniles between the ages of 15 and 17, each of them wanted on outstanding warrants for violent felonies and weapons offenses. Many of the teens were already identified as active members of local gangs. Authorities explained that the arrests were not random, but part of a targeted strategy to address the city's surge in violent crime. By removing repeat juvenile offenders from the streets, particularly those connected to robberies and illegal firearm possession, police aimed to disrupt the cycle of gang violence before it escalated further. The sweep highlighted the reality that gang activity in Shreveport is not limited to adults. Even teenagers were entrenched in the culture of guns, drugs, and retaliation, making them both perpetrators and victims of violence. Operation MO served as a clear message that law enforcement intended to pursue gang-related offenders regardless of age, as part of a broader push to restore safety to Shreveport's neighborhoods.
Authorities say the men were arrested during a series of raids around Bogalusa. They say the men are part of a snatcher gang that has been a problem around that city for several years. Investigators say the gang is responsible for drug distribution, armed robberies, and burglaries, and have been selling stolen firearms.
In Bogalusa, Louisiana, the crew locals called the Snatcher Gang didn't operate like a big city super organization, but in a town of barely over 10,000 people, their footprint felt huge. Investigators and residents described Snatcher as a tight circle of dealers pushing H laced with fentanyl on Bogalusa's streets, sometimes stamped and branded to build a name, and backing that trade with guns. In a community already dealing with addiction and poverty, that combination of fentanyl, street-level intimidation, and sudden flare-ups of violence turned a small mill town into the backdrop for overdoses, retaliatory beefs, and armed encounters that outpaced its size. Federal agents eventually folded Snatcher into a wider Washington Parish operation that focused on drugs and firearms trafficking. ATF, Bogalusa police, and parish authorities worked together, hitting houses with warrants, recovering drugs, cash, and weapons, and tracing how guns and narcotics were moving along local highways.
Authorities say the men were
Instead
arrested
of treating
during
each overdose or gun case as a one-off, they started building it as an enterprise. A group of Bogalusa men allegedly supplying drugs, arming themselves despite prior records, and using the gang's name to project fear and control. That culminated in federal indictments accusing several defendants of conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, possession with intent to distribute, and firearms offenses like being a felon in possession or carrying guns in furtherance of drug trafficking.
That rivalry between two rap groups led to the of a man who was hiding out in Bogalusa. After days on the run, two men accused of the crime are now arrested. And as Mike McDaniel explains, police are thankful this shooting didn't leave more people dead.
Balloons, candles, and bullet holes in the door of apartment 6 at the Union Point housing complex in Bogalusa are reminders of what happened early Monday morning.
It's senseless.
Captain David Miller says 19-year-old Michael Brock, a rapper from neighboring Tangipahoa Parish, opened the door after hearing a knock. Miller says Brock came to Bogalusa because he was getting death threats from a rival rap group.
He thought maybe I can come to Bogalusa and lay low a little bit, and apparently they followed him here.
They are 19-year-olds Cordavian White and Taj Taplin. Miller says White drove the car, and Taplin is the one who was outside the door with an AR-15 assault rifle.
There was a lot of bullets fired, and it's scary.
Miller says more than 10 shell casings were found. Thursday, White and Taplin were pulled over during a traffic stop outside of Houston, Texas. That's when authorities say a struggle ended with White's arrest and Taplin escaping. After a high-speed chase into Louisiana, Taplin was arrested near Lake Charles. Miller says none of it should have ever happened.
In June 2021, a simmering rap rivalry tied to Tangipahoa Parish spilled over into Bogalusa when 19-year Noel Kentwood rapper Michael Brock, affiliated with the 313 crew, was shot and met his demise after opening the door of an apartment in the Sunset Acres housing complex where he and friends were hiding out because of social media death threats from a rival group. Investigators say those threats came from a Kentwood MC Cone-based rap crew called The Fours, and that the online back and forth escalated into a planned hit. According to Bogalusa police, Taj Shardas Taplin, also from Kentwood, went to the unit's door and opened fire at close range, while another, Cordavian Tyvon White of MC Cone, Mississippi, waited nearby as the getaway driver and was suspected of having ties to the Chicago-born gangster Disciples. After Brock met his demise, a multi-agency manhunt kicked off, pulling in Bogalusa PD, Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff's deputies, using surveillance footage from the complex, and shared gang intel. They tracked the suspects to the Houston area. When officers tried to move in, Taplin and White allegedly led them on a high-speed chase toward Beaumont, weaving through traffic until the pursuit ended in Texas, where White was caught after a struggle and booked on local charges tied to the chase and resisting, while Taplin slipped away on foot. Later that same day, Louisiana State Police located Taplin near Lake Charles and took him into custody without incident, leaving both men facing a stack of counts. In Bogalusa and Washington Parish, they were booked on second-degree murder and related conspiracy and firearms charges for Brock's demise, while separate Texas and Calcasieu Parish cases cover the flight and confrontation with officers.
About half a dozen Louisiana state troopers arrived at Bogalusa City Court Tuesday morning after announcing the arrest of the city's mayor, Tyron Trong. The 25-year-old mayor and 6 others are accused of being part of a drug trafficking organization out of Bogalusa. State troopers weren't the only ones at Bogalusa City Hall.
I'm coming to show my support because he's innocent. He's not guilty of any charges, you know. And I'm going to back him to the end because he's innocent.
Members of the organization allegedly used social media to distribute. Investigators believe the profits from the drug sales were used to purchase guns, which in some cases landed in the hands of those who were prohibited from owning a gun. Trong is also being accused of soliciting for. However, his supporters believe he's being framed because of racial bias.
Our city has so much racism, so much bigotry, so much hatred. There's such a division of white and black, even in the areas that we live. There's so much that it's an embarrassment now.
During a Tuesday press briefing in New Orleans, Attorney General Liz Murrill said additional arrests are likely. The mayor's supporters credit him for reducing the city's crime and providing resources for children.
And if we lose him, we've lost a good thing.
Officers. The mayor's arrest is the detail that flips this Bogalusa case from a typical narcotics headline into a full-blown public trust earthquake. Investigators say the probe began in April 2024, aimed at a trafficking network operating in and around Bogalusa. But when the enforcement phase went public on January 7, 2025, the story instantly changed because among the 7 people booked was Bogalusa Mayor Tyron Trong, the city's highest-profile public figure. Authorities publicly listed Trong's booking charges as transactions involving proceeds from drug offenses, along with unauthorized use of a movable and soliciting for prosti work. In a small city, that's not just an arrest, it's a shockwave. It raises the kind of questions that don't fit neatly into a police press release. How close was the alleged operation to local power? Was the city being led while investigators were building a case in the background? And what does it do to a community when the person meant to represent order and stability becomes part of the headline? Bogalusa police say the case started the night when officers were called to Our Lady of the Angels Hospital about a shooting victim. Investigators said Larman Godbolt had been shot earlier in the 1800 block of Lastly Street in Bogalusa and was later pronounced dead at the hospital. 3 juvenile suspects, ages 15, 16, and 17, and believed armed robbery was the motive. Investigators also alleged the teens were connected to the YBF Street gang out of Illinois, with at least one having ties back to Bogalusa. Detectives tracked the suspects, arrested them, and said they seized 3 handguns during the takedown. Bogalusa's so-called Snatcher gang appears in court records as a small local crew that federal agents said helped move drugs through Washington Parish and beyond. Investigators with ATF and Bogalusa police spent months building the case with controlled buys and surveillance. By 2019, they told a federal grand jury that 3 Bogalusa brothers, including DeMarquez, Devin Harris, were central to a local drug pipeline, selling amounts that ranged from small street-level deals to multi-ounce quantities. Agents said they repeatedly purchased drugs from Harris and his brothers Trevian and John Zarion between late 2018 and May 2019, and that their circle kept appearing as investigators traced supply. Harris drew wider attention when ATF New Orleans issued a wanted notice labeling him a suspected Snatcher gang member and warning he should be considered armed and dangerous. A Louisiana State Police trooper stopped Harris on Interstate 20, where he allegedly used the name Sean Forbes. When the trooper requested a K-9 and Harris refused a search, police say he fled, triggering a multi-parish pursuit that reportedly reached around 125 miles per hour before he crashed on Louisiana 581. After the wreck, investigators said they recovered suspected drugs from the vehicle, consistent with what federal agents had accused him of trafficking. On the state side, the chase added multiple charges, including drug possession and aggravated flight from an officer, along with traffic-related counts. Public reporting described the arrest and bookings, but did not clearly lay out how every state charge was ultimately resolved. In March 2022, Harris pleaded guilty to multiple drug counts tied to a larger indictment, including conspiracy and distribution offenses. A federal judge sentenced him to 262 months in prison, just under 22 years, followed by 5 years of supervised release.
In other developing news this morning, Baton Rouge police making an arrest in connection to a deadly shooting that happened earlier this month.
Police say 20-year-old Rashawn Alexander pulled the trigger. Nicholas Williams on Aliquippa Street back on March 5th.
How this happened? Well, Sylvia, Rashawn Alexander, known locally as rapper Hot Boy Do, has been in and out of jail for several years. Prosecutors thought his most recent arrest would have kept him in jail until trial, but that didn't happen.
This is video of Rashawn Alexander leaving the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison early Wednesday morning.
The jail let him go.
The problem is, the district attorney says he wasn't supposed to be released.
Apparently, he paid the commercial bond, and no holes were reflected at the prison for whatever reason, and he was able to bond out like anyone else would have.
The 21-year-old rapper has been in parish prison since March of 2023, waiting to stand trial on a charge of second-degree. Baton Rouge police arrested him then, accused of shooting Nicholas Williams. At the time, Alexander was out on bond for other charges. On Tuesday, during a routine motion hearing, Judge Tarvald Smith found no probable cause for one of those charges involving possession of a firearm. For reasons still unclear, there was no longer documentation holding Alexander in jail, and the jail allowed him to post a $260,000 bond and leave.
A months-long investigation into an alleged Baton Rouge-based gang led to the arrest of 5 suspects. Police say the group is a part of the gang, the 60 gang. The 4 suspects were already in jail, or these 4 suspects were already in jail on separate arrest, according to police.
So new tonight, this now former East Baton Rouge prison deputy is behind bars, accused of bringing contraband into the prison. Investigators say they got tipped off about it, so they began monitoring phone calls. They say an inmate was instructing his brother to call a woman. Investigators say that number belonged to this woman here, Tibrecia Gibson.
A months-long investigation into the Baton Rouge-based 60 gang has resulted in the arrests of 4 members, with charges for a 5th individual pending, according to law enforcement officials. Baton Rouge Police Department, BRPD, revealed that members of the 60 gang were arrested on various charges, including narcotics and weapons violations, as well as violent crimes such as deletion. Police had obtained warrants for the suspects, who were already incarcerated due to prior arrests. According to arrest records, members of the gang were offered $10,000 to silence a witness connected to a deletion that Henderson allegedly committed. The 5 suspects reportedly worked together to locate the witness. They discussed the plan extensively, exchanged photos, and plotted to steal a car in order to harm the witness, as described in the arrest report. In a related development, a deputy from the East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office, a female deputy, was arrested and fired after allegedly leaking information to her inmate boyfriend, a member of the 60 gang. She was charged with malfeasance in office and bringing contraband into a penal institution. The arrest warrant suggests that Gibson's arrest stemmed from the ongoing 60 gang investigation. In August, while monitoring phone calls, the district attorney's investigator overheard a conversation between Dedrick White and his brother, Lance White. They discussed sending Instagram messages to fellow inmate Rashawn Alexander to arrange a contraband exchange. The scheme was foiled when investigators intercepted a video of the handoff on August 19 and recovered drugs and a cell phone. After this incident, White and Alexander were transferred to a jail in East Carroll Parish, though White was later returned to East Baton Rouge. Authorities continued monitoring their calls, eventually identifying Gibson as the person communicating with Alexander. Gibson admitted to investigators that she had been in a relationship with Alexander for several years, and that after his 2024 arrest, he sent her money via cell phone apps. She also admitted to delivering envelopes she had received from Alexander's brother, Rasheen, which contained contraband. Authorities announced that both Rashawn and Rasheen Alexander would also face charges for smuggling contraband into the prison.
A major blow to an alleged theft ring. East Baton Rouge Parish District Attorney says several gang members have now been hit with formal charges tied to multiple violent crimes and a number of drug and weapons offenses. Now, this gang is allegedly known as the Bleedas. Baton Rouge police say they're tied to an armed robbery. A couple of them, actually 2 ATM repair technicians. These men are now facing various charges, including 3 counts of armed robbery with a firearm, 1 count of attempted conspiracy to commit armed robbery.
Police say the group robbed ATMs across the parish of more than $300,000, a tactic we are told they learned in Houston and brought it here to Baton Rouge to get large amounts of cash.
They were waiting till the technicians got there and they were able to open up the ATMs and get the money out.
Sergeant Elgin McNeely with the Baton Rouge Police Department says that money was used in other crimes, including recent shootings, robberies, and drug deals. Because of that, several men accused of these crimes are facing an additional charge of criminal street gangs.
Alleged members of the Bleeders gang stood in a Baton Rouge courtroom awaiting their arraignments. The charges also carry criminal street gang enhancements, suggesting that these alleged crimes were committed to further the interests of the Bleeders organization, according to authorities. Among the 6, only 2 had retained legal representation. The Bleeders gang came under police scrutiny after a series of armed robberies, including incidents involving ATM repair technicians, during which nearly $360,000 was stolen. Investigations by the Baton Rouge Police Department and the East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office ultimately linked these heists and other criminal activities in the area to the Bleeders gang. Police reports suggest that the Bleeders are aligned with other local gangs like Forgius and YTO. Young is taken over. These groups, marked by red symbols such as blood drops and mahjong tile designs, often share gang signs and hashtags like Bleeda and YTO on social media platforms. Authorities describe the Bleeders as a criminal enterprise based in the Glen Oaks neighborhood of Baton Rouge. One of the indicted defendants, Von Court, is a local rapper known as 40 Glock, according to reports. Investigators say they infiltrated the gang by monitoring members' Instagram posts, where several were seen flashing stacks of $50 bills in the days following the alleged robberies. The investigation into the Bleeders gang also uncovered a violent episode on January 4th when 6 of its members were shot in a mass shooting at the Urban Meadows apartment complex. Juwan Lee Quinn Alexi met his demise in the attack, which police suspect was linked to ongoing gang disputes. 2 of the indicted men were among the 5 wounded in the shooting, police said. Nearly 3 years ago, city, parish, and state law enforcement officials made headlines with the indictment and arrest of 19 alleged members and associates of the Gardera area Big Money Block Boys street gang. These arrests were part of a significant crackdown involving charges of racketeering and various other crimes, marking the largest gang-related roundup in East Baton Rouge Parish's history. It was also the first major prosecution tied to the Baton Rouge Area Violence Elimination Project, known as BRAVE. The 24-count indictment against the group included serious charges such as attempted second-degree deletion, obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and a range of drug and gun offenses. In January, nearly 3 years after the original indictment and after multiple delays, prosecutors dropped the racketeering charges. The original 19 defendants have since dwindled to 8, including 7 key figures prosecutors label as major players. Several defendants have either pleaded guilty or been dismissed from the case. The remaining 8 defendants will face separate trials. Moore admitted that prosecuting a large racketeering case is challenging, especially with so many defendants involved. He added that funding issues also complicated the process. Public Defender Mike Mitchell echoed those concerns, noting that his office had real financial constraints, making it difficult to manage the large, complex case. State District Judge Trudy White had initially ordered the state to set aside $3 million to pay for court-appointed lawyers for 7 of the defendants. However, the State First Circuit Court of Appeal reversed her decision, calling the amount exorbitant. As a result, White recused herself from the case, which was later reassigned to another judge. In March, the case was stayed once again when officials from the East Baton Rouge Parish Public Defender's Office and the Louisiana Public Defender Board argued there was no funding available for court-appointed attorneys. Judge Jerome Winsberg, who was appointed to oversee the case, reduced the defendants' bail and released those not serving time for unrelated charges. The stay was lifted in November when resources became available to pay the attorneys, and the court ordered prosecutors to simplify the charges further.
For the first time, Congress and local governments allowed the state of Louisiana to use the federal racketeer statute, also known as RICO, prosecuting all suspects alleged to be involved in a gang at once.
Young folks who want to be involved in gangs, guide yourselves accordingly, because the buck stops here. We're no longer playing with you. We're no longer dealing with you. We will start trying you under this RICO statute, trying your entire gangs.
In this case, these 5 men could spend the rest of their lives behind bars for the shooting of Eugene Giroux. It happened on Pennsylvania Avenue in New Roads. Deputies say the victim was shot to 3 different guns back in 2021, and whoever had any involvement in the case will be held accountable.
In one of Louisiana's first convictions under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO, 5 members of the Young and Reckless gang were sentenced to life in prison. The men were found guilty for the demise of Eugene Giroux III on January 21, 2021. The trial concluded on April 12 at the Pointe Coupée courthouse, where an emotional statement from the victim's family was read before the court. According to court documents, the men went to Giroux's home on Pennsylvania Avenue in New Roads, Louisiana, armed with multiple firearms, including an R rifle and 3 9mm pistols. The attack stemmed from an incident earlier that night when Jones' sister nearly met her demise from drugs obtained from the victim. Johnson, also known as Quarter Baby and believed to be the leader of the gang, orchestrated the deletion in retaliation. When the group arrived at Giroux's residence, they shot him 21 times after he answered the door, officials said.
They say call themselves the Motion Boys. Deputies say they found several locations used to hide and distribute all this stuff, the drugs, across the parish. Those 6 are now facing street gang charges and several drug and gun charges.
Deputies, though, are still looking for these 2 suspects in relation to that case. EBRSO says they believe Mitchell Johnson is the leader of the Motion Boys. Deputies say Chedrick Townsend is also involved.
Authorities in East Baton Rouge Parish are on the hunt for 2 suspects after a major drug bust involving a group known as the Motion Boys. According to the East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office, a 2-month investigation targeted multiple individuals associated with the group. Investigators identified several locations used by the suspects to hide and distribute drugs throughout the parish, as well as the group's leader, Mitchell Johnson, and several other co-conspirators.
Officials are calling a major bust. Investigators say they've taken a dangerous gang off the streets of New Orleans.
Scott, the gang is called the 6th Ward D Block, and District Attorney Leon Canizero says the 11 men who make up the gang have terrorized an area of the 6th Ward near Dumaine and Broad Street for years. Right now, 10 men are in custody. All are charged with racketeering. The men, as you see here, are Lance Prince, Sheldon Jackson, Mark Quinn Lewis, Blake Ricks, Nathaniel Brown, Torin Duhon, Jamal Howard, Terrell Muse, Cecil Martin, and Glenn McCormick. On the run is 20-year-old Darnell Ellis. Leon Canizero says the men operated in the 2600 block of Dumaine Street. Canizero says this is the first time in more than 10 years that a local prosecutor has used the racketeering statute against the gang.
As part of a push to lower the city's jail population due to the threat of the coronavirus, an accused drug gang ringleader was released on his own recognizance last week. He didn't last 4 days before he was shot. Investigative reporter Mike Perlstein has exclusive details.
Due to the threat of the coronavirus, Glenn McCormick was released from Orleans Parish Jail Thursday. He had been awaiting trial as one of the ringleaders of the notorious drug gang known as D Block. Here's the ankle monitor McCormick was wearing Sunday when he was cut down by a hail of bullets. Most people following stay-at-home orders, records show McCormick visited the Dumaine Street drug hotspot every day since his release.
And he frequents that place the entire time he's out.
When McCormick was first indicted in 2018, his bail was set at $1 million. Judge Daryl Durbany dropped that to $150,000 more than a year ago, then down to a free signature bond with a curfew last week.
So when he released him with no restrictions other than the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. curfew, basically signed a death warrant, and the judge failed miserably.
We're diving into another shocking case from the streets of New Orleans, this time focusing on the tragic and swift downfall of Glenn McCormick, the alleged leader of the D Block gang. This notorious gang, named after the area near Dumaine and Broad Streets where McCormick once lived, has long been associated with trafficking and violence in the Treem neighborhood. McCormick's story took a dramatic turn when he was released from jail on a reconnaissance bond, a decision made due to concerns over the coronavirus pandemic. Just 2 years earlier, McCormick's bail had been set at $1 million due to his extensive criminal history. But in a surprising move, Orleans Parish District Judge Daryl Durbiny reduced his bail multiple times, eventually leading to his release on what seemed like a technicality. but McCormick's freedom was short-lived, less than 4 days, to be exact. On Sunday afternoon, McCormick was deleted in a hail of bullets at the very drug turf he once controlled. His release conditions included wearing an ankle monitor and following a curfew, but despite these measures, McCormick returned to his old stomping grounds immediately after his release. Surveillance data showed that McCormick spent his brief time of freedom revisiting the same neighborhood he was known to frequent, even with the state's stay-at-home orders in place. The deletion of McCormick has sparked outrage, with many pointed fingers at Judge Durbiny for what some are calling a reckless decision. Raphael Goyenesh, president of the Metropolitan Crime Commission, stated bluntly that the judge has blood on his hands for allowing McCormick's release with minimal restrictions. The decision has also drawn sharp criticism from District Attorney Leon Canizzaro, who argued that McCormick's deletion was entirely avoidable and served no public safety purpose. Adding to the complexity of this case is the presence of Johnny Johnson, a co-defendant in the same racketeering case, who was released under similar conditions. Shockingly, monitoring records show that Johnson was at the scene of McCormick's deletion within minutes, raising further questions about the circumstances surrounding this tragic event. McCormick's attorney expressed disbelief at the violent end of his client's life, describing the deletion as totally unexpected. However, the speed and violence of McCormick's deletion have left many in the community in shock, with the incident serving as a stark reminder of the dangerous world of gang life and the often tragic consequences that come with it.
2 men in the alleged 3G gang pleaded not guilty to charges of racketeering and drugs and weapons.
Police are still looking for these 2 suspects, Kentrell Hickerson and Kevin Lynch. Warrants are out for their arrest, and when they are captured, they'll each be held on a $2 million bond. WDSU anchor Rachel Wolf was in court today and has details.
18 alleged members of the 3NG gang were arraigned in court today, all pleading not guilty to the crimes they are charged with. It is the beginning of what many expect to be a long and complicated criminal proceeding.
The state says the 3NG gang ran a criminal drug enterprise that, quote, promoted a climate of fear through violence, and that half of the suspects are responsible for 10 murders.
This was unprecedented, what you saw today. In all those years I've been here, I've never seen anything like this.
We parents, we want to see what's going on with our child. We not criminals.
Tensions ran high inside and outside of a packed hearing at criminal court today. 18 members of an accused Central City gang arraigned today in criminal court. The case is so big and the accused crimes so heinous, added security was called in.
WDSU News anchor Rachel Wolf explains why this case could pose a legal problem for the city.
In all those years I've been here, I've never seen anything like this in terms of the arraignment. 20+ defendants, security at a maximum. It was unreal.
Security was tight inside Judge Camille Burris's courtroom as 18 alleged members of the 3NG gang heard the 29-count indictment against them, which includes gun and drug charges and racketeering.
And I think that is a shame and wrong.
Outside, family vented their frustrations after being turned away when the courtroom was full.
I want to be in there when they saying this about my son. I want to be right there and see what's going on with mine. That's my child up in there. He haven't been found guilty of no crime.
The state says the group ran a criminal drug enterprise in Central City that, quote, promoted a climate of fear through violence.
We're delving into the chilling story of Kentrell Black Hickerson, the notorious leader of the 3NG gang, who was just handed a 100-year sentence for his role in leading one of New Orleans' most violent criminal enterprises. The 3NG gang, named after its home turf at 3rd and Galvez Streets, has been active in Central City for years, using violence to dominate the drug markets. This gang's rise to power left a trail of bloodshed across the city, including some of the most tragic and high-profile deletions New Orleans has seen. Hickerson, now 36, was convicted of racketeering and conspiracy to distribution, charges that stem from his leadership in the gang's drug-dealing operations. Orleans Parish Criminal District Court Judge Camille Burris sentenced Hickerson to 100 years at hard labor in state prison. This sentence reflects the severity of the crimes he was convicted of, as well as his history as a repeat offender, which District Attorney Leon Canizzaro's office emphasized in court. During his trial, which spanned 2 weeks, Hickerson's former associates took the stand and provided testimony about his role in the gang's activities. They allege that he was responsible for the deletions of Durrell Duke Pooler in October 2008 and Omar Bro 5 months later. Witnesses also claim that Hickerson either directly committed or ordered several other deletions to solidify the gang's control over the Central City drug trade. One of the most haunting aspects of this case is that not all of the 3NG's victims were intended targets. A high-profile victim was rapper Renata Magnolia Shorty Lowe, who was caught in the crossfire during an attack primarily aimed at Jerome Man Hampton in December 2010. Magnolia Shorty and Man were both deleted as they sat in a car in New Orleans East, highlighting the violence that permeated the gang's activities. Hickerson's 100-year sentence marks a significant development in this case, but it also raises questions about the ongoing impact of gang violence in New Orleans. As Hickerson appeals his conviction, the legal process continues, and the community remains watchful of the outcomes that will follow. This case serves as a reminder of the complexities involved in addressing gang-related crime and the ongoing efforts to bring justice to those affected. Stay tuned as we continue to bring you updates and deeper insights into this case and others like it, offering a comprehensive look at the challenges faced by communities grappling with gang violence. We're diving into the story of Corey Da Chef Exposé, the alleged leader of the Cutthroat City Snake Gang, a notorious drug ring that claimed territory in New Orleans' lower 9th Ward around Flood and Marais Streets. Expose, who has a long history of criminal activity, just received a 20-year prison sentence under the state's habitual offender law. But this case is far from straightforward, and there's a lot more to unpack. Expose, now 33, chose to accept a flat 20-year sentence rather than risk facing life behind bars. His latest conviction stems from a 2009 arrest for attempted drug possession. But that's just one chapter in a criminal career that spans over a decade. Back in 2000, Expose pleaded guilty to possession with intent to distribute and was sentenced to 5 years. Then, in 2005, he received a 30-month sentence as a multiple offender after pleading guilty to drug possession. The plot thickens with a separate case involving Expose and 8 others, many of whom are related. They were indicted last September under a rarely used state racketeering law, accused of various drug offenses. These charges aren't just about small-time dealing, we're talking heavy volumes of drugs and a sophisticated operation. The case is still pending, and Exposé remains a key defendant. What's particularly interesting is that several members of this alleged gang have been featured in a YouTube video where they're seen cooking up drugs and flaunting their lifestyle on camera. This kind of brazen behavior has made them a prime target for law enforcement, who are now using an obscure state racketeering law to connect the dots between these seemingly isolated crimes and paint a broader picture of organized gang activity. Among those indicted alongside Expose is Bruce Baldhead Carter, who has his own criminal past, including a 2004 conviction for aggravated second-degree battery, for which he was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Court records show that Carter and Exposé have had a drug-related relationship dating back at least 14 years. The others indicted include Reginald Pookie LaFrance, Walter Lil Walt Thomas, Theodore Taz Keys III, Bilal Denley, Tinekia Washington, Nikisha Warren, and Ronald Rouleau Expose, who is Corey Expose's brother.
Michael Anderson was accused of shooting 5 teens in Central City back in 2006, but federal prosecutors say he was not the one responsible.
And instead, they're pointing the finger at Telly Hankton, a man who's been called the crime boss of New Orleans. WDSU News reporter Travis Mackler is here with what this means for Anderson, who was first charged for this.
Well, most likely nothing, because his convictions were vacated years ago. But the fact the feds now say Hankton is the trigger man could prove detrimental at his upcoming trial. On this quiet Central City street corner today, no one wanted to talk about the killing that happened almost a decade ago. It's always been rumored that reputed crime boss Telly Hankton could be involved, and now the feds believe that's true. In a federal filing before Hankton's June murder trial in federal court, the feds say they believe he pulled the trigger on an assault rifle, killing 5 teens. Prosecutors want to use that information against Hankton, even though he's never been charged with the...
There are serious questions tonight surrounding the district attorney's office. This is witness protection system. This after a man whose brother testified in a high-profile case Saturday night. It's a story we first broke earlier today on WDSU.com. The victim's brother testified in the trial of Telly Hankton, also known as one of the most dangerous men in New Orleans. WDSU reporter Tiffany Bradley is on your side with what this killing could mean for the future of
New Orleans police have confirmed that a 61-year-old man shot to the side of this Jazz Daiquiri and Lounge on Claiborne Avenue Saturday night is indeed the brother of a man who was a key witness in the Telly Hankton trial last month. A brutal uptown could be linked to the city's most dangerous criminal, who's now behind bars. Curtis Matthews, the co-owner of this daiquiri shop, was gunned down in front of his business Saturday night. But this shooting comes days after a high-profile criminal, Telly Hankton, was sentenced to life in prison. Curtis Matthews was the brother of the man who helped put Hankton behind bars. Back in September, John Matthews testified he was almost certain Hankton shot Darnell Stewart in front of his daiquiri shop in May 2008.
Criminals is now the center of a federal indictment, but the feds didn't stop with 36-year-old Telly Hankton. 12 of his family members and alleged associates were charged today in connection with a violent drug ring.
We went to the neighborhood where the Hanktons live to get reaction from the family to today's charges.
In the 1900 block of Josephine Street, just about everyone is family. The Hankton family, labeled by law enforcement as a violent drug trafficking organization, but Hankton family members and neighbors say that characterization is both unfair and untrue.
Don't listen to everything the media has to say, because the media don't know. If you was around the Hankton family, you will know them, and everything is not the truth.
Still, in an early morning sweep, federal agents rounded up Shirley Hankton and others related to or associated with the family.
Shirley Hankton is a wonderful woman, a wonderful grandmother.
In all, 13 people have been named in this federal indictment with charges ranging from conspiracy and money laundering to drug dealing and murder. The government says Telly Hankton is the leader of the group. Investigators allege the criminal activity dates back more than 15 years, spans 2 states, and includes 4 2 of which happened here at the Jazz Daiquiri Lounge on Claiborne.
The city's most dangerous criminal is scheduled to start today. A judge continued Edward Allen's first-degree until today. Prosecutors say that Allen took part in the shooting of Jesse Reed back in 2009. Allen is said to have committed the crime with Telly Hankton. Back in October, the district attorney's office argued to have Allen's trial pushed back until after Hankton's trial due to a concern for witness safety. But
we're diving into one of the most notorious criminal cases to come out of New Orleans, the story of Telly Hankton, Andre Hankton, Walter Porter, and Kevin Jackson, all key members of a violent street gang known as the Hankton Enterprise. This gang, led by Telly Hankton, ruled the streets of New Orleans' Central City neighborhood, dealing drugs and leaving a trail of violence in their wake. The Hankton Enterprise's criminal reign came to a head in 2004 when a deadly turf war broke out between them and a rival gang led by Brian Broussard. This bloody feud escalated into a series of brutal shootings, resulting in at least 7 deletions. 4 of these violent encounters became the focal point of the charges that ultimately brought down the Hankton Enterprise. One of the most chilling incidents was the deletion of Darnell Stewart, a member of Broussard's gang. Stewart had been involved in the deletion of Telly's cousin, George Hankton. Seeking revenge, Andre and Telly tracked down Stewart in broad daylight on Claiborne Avenue. After a high-speed chase, Telly jumped out of the car, and after Andre rammed Stewart with their vehicle, Telly stood over Stewart and hit him 10 times, deleting him on the spot. This cold-blooded execution was caught on surveillance footage from a nearby daiquiri shop, footage that would later play a crucial role in the case against them. But the violence didn't stop there. About a year later, Telly hired Walter Porter to take out Jesse Reed, another member of Broussard's gang, as further revenge for George's deletion. With the help of Kevin Jackson, they tracked Reed down and executed him in a gruesome attack, hitting him 50 times. Telly, already in prison for his role in Reed's deletion, continued to orchestrate violence from behind bars, ordering the deletion of the daiquiri shop owner who had provided the crucial surveillance footage to the police. The Duckwary shop owner survived an assassination attempt in 2010, but the following year, his brother was not so lucky. Porter, following Telly's orders, deleted the brother in what appeared to be a revenge deletion. The Hankton Enterprises' reign of terror finally came to an end in 2014 when a federal grand jury indicted Telly, Andre, Porter, Jackson, and 9 others on charges including violations of the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO, drug trafficking, illegal gun possession, and violent crimes in aid of racketeering. Their trial, held 2 years later, was a massive affair with dozens of exhibits and testimony from over 70 witnesses. The jury delivered a mixed verdict, convicting the defendants on some charges while acquitting them on others. This case serves as a stark reminder of the deadly consequences of gang violence and the relentless pursuit of justice by law enforcement to bring those responsible to account.
3 men and 1 woman. Now, the DA's office says that at the time of these crimes, their ages ranged from 16 to the early 20s. Now, the DA also says that there are additional warrants out for the arrest of defendants associated with this group. The group has been connected to a violent crime spree over the summer, including multiple auto burglaries, an armed robbery in August, plus a pistol whipping and murder at the Shamrock Bar and a shooting across from Kip Central back in September. They were able to tie these individuals to evidence found by both NOPD and Louisiana State Police.
Let's start with who these people are, because this gang is different from what New Orleans has dealt with before. The Glock Boys operate across Orleans Parish and Jefferson Parish. No single corner, no fixed block. They're decentralized, which is the new model. They hit Mid-City, the 7th Ward, Central City. Their crimes span multiple neighborhoods and 2 parishes. Law enforcement had to track them across the city before the pattern became clear. They also go by another name, the Fox 8 Boys. That name tells you everything. Not named after a block or a set named for their obsession with media coverage. These guys watched documentaries about gangs and wanted that level of notoriety. They filmed themselves. They bragged online. They posted crimes to social media. In the end, that same digital trail is what helped take them down. The 4 members indicted in December 2024. Davon Twin Davis, 19 years old, one of the primary defendants, charged with armed robbery, attempted deletion, second-degree deletion, and RICO. Davis participated in the most violent incidents and became one of the 2 members hit with the racketeering count. Jomar Gliz, Walsh, 18 to 19 years old, the other core defendant, also charged with deletion, attempted deletion, and RICO. Walsh was present at the Kip Academy shooting and the Shamrock Bar deletion. He and Davis are the Enterprise's racketeering anchors. Carlos Los Taylor, 17 years old, the youngest member, armed robbery, attempted deletion, and later, one of the most audacious escape attempts this city has seen in years. We'll get to that. Shanti Mark, 24 to 25 years old, alleged gang associate, charged with second-degree deletion and battery with a dangerous weapon in connection with the Shamrock Bar demise. Mark worked as a patient care specialist at a local hospital. She was also a mother of 4 children, aged 3 to 7. And this was not her first encounter with law enforcement. These aren't anonymous figures. These are real people with real names, and they left a trail of real victims behind them. The gang's name is also deliberate. Glock Boys isn't just branding. Law enforcement has documented a sharp rise in the use of Glock switches in New Orleans' small conversion devices that turn a semi-automatic handgun into a fully automatic weapon. Pull the trigger once. It doesn't stop. 30 rounds in seconds. The Kip Academy shooting? More than 30 bullets. That's not a semi-automatic. That's a switch.
Office announced grand jury indictments for members of a notorious gang.
Glock Boys have been on a violent crime spree across Orleans and Jefferson parishes.
We had a very clear picture of just how violent this group was and just how pervasive their activity was over the summer of 2024.
3 men and 1 woman between the ages of 16 and 25 were tied to the Glock Boys.
This is not a group of young men
who were doing delinquent things. This was not a group of loosely associated neighbors who were making bad decisions. This is an organized criminal network.
The 4 suspects now face formal charges for a litany of crimes.
It starts with cars. The Glock boys didn't build their arsenal by buying weapons legally or connecting to a supply chain. They went simpler. They broke into parked cars and stole the firearms inside, over and over, across multiple neighborhoods, through July, August, and into September of 2024. Rafael Goyeneche of the Metropolitan Crime Commission noted the shift. Gangs like the Glock boys are no longer centralized in one location, and they're no longer running drug operations either. This crew's model was weapon theft feeding directly into violent crime. Steal a gun, use it, steal another. That pipelined auto burglaries turning into deletions is exactly the kind of ongoing enterprise structure that RICO is built to prosecute. 6 weeks into the summer, Davis and Taylor committed an armed robbery using a firearm. Count 1 of the indictment. This was not impulsive. This was a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old working together with a gun, taking what they wanted from someone who couldn't stop them. 2 weeks later, the same pair would be standing near a school with 30 rounds going off around them. The escalation wasn't random. It was a pattern.
24-year-old Shantae Mark has been arrested in connection with the 29-year-old Raven Francis. She was shot after a fight involving a large group of people early Sunday morning in the parking lot of the Shamrock Bar and Grill on South Carrollton. Police say they picked up Shantae Mark this morning at a hotel in Chalmette after they secured a warrant for her arrest. Now, family members of Raven Francis say she was out with her sisters when there was a fight in the parking lot along Carrollton, and they attempted to leave the area. As they were driving away, someone opened fire, hitting Francis in the head and causing the car to hit a fire hydrant and flip over. Francis leaves behind 4 kids, the youngest just 6 months old. Last night, her family held a memorial for her.
24-year-old Shantae Mark is no stranger to law enforcement. In May of last year, Mark and a man were arrested in connection with the March 2023 of a 19-year-old on Almanaster. The DA's office would later refuse those charges, saying in part, quote, "While there was some evidence Mark may have been in the same vehicle with the victim on the morning of the, there was insufficient evidence that she participated in any way with the shooting. The investigation was unable to yield any eyewitnesses to the crime. In addition, investigators were unable to recover any physical evidence, forensic evidence, or video evidence of who the actual perpetrator was. Court records obtained by Fox 8 also reveal new details. Records show investigators obtained several different pieces of video showing the fight outside the Shamrock Bar and Grill leading up to Francis's killing. The video, court documents say, also shows Mark leaving the melee and running back to a car, then returning carrying a gun and beating a victim with it. Detectives believe that's when Mark called 2 men in a black SUV to the parking lot. Detectives say a witness told them Mark entered the SUV, and when Francis and her friends and sisters went to leave, detectives say video shows the SUV following them and someone inside opening fire. Mark was arrested Wednesday at a hotel.
New Orleans police arrested 18-year-old Jomar Gliz Walsh and Devon Davis for the shooting death of 29-year-old Raven Francis outside of Shamrock Bar. Police say on September 1st, Francis, 3 of her sisters, and a friend were in a fight with another group of women in the bar's parking lot.
It's not even 3 a.m. on September 1st, 2024. The Shamrock Bar and Grill on South Carrollton Avenue. A large group of women are in the parking lot when a fight breaks out. Shantae Mark is in the middle of it. According to the arrest warrant, Mark retrieved a firearm from her white Nissan Altima and used it to beat one of the women a separate charge of battery with a dangerous weapon. But she wasn't done. Mark called in reinforcements. 2 men arrive in a black SUV. Surveillance cameras capture everything. Mark's white Altima and the black SUV circling the lot. Mark climbs into the SUV with the 2 men. Raven Francis and her group try to leave. They don't make it. The SUV pursues their vehicle through the parking lot. Gunshots erupt. Raven Francis is hit. Her car strikes a fire hydrant and flips over at the corner of Bodan and South Solomon Streets. She was 29 years old, a mother of 4. She was pronounced dead at the hospital. 4 other women, her companions that night, were also wounded. 4 days later, on September 4th, Shanti Mark was arrested at a hotel in Chalmette. Her bond was set at $1 million. She was arraigned September 5th. Here's the detail that made investigators look twice. This was not Shanti Mark's first deletion arrest. In May 2024, just 4 months earlier, she had been arrested in connection with the 2023 demise of a 19-year-old named Darren Myler, who met his demise on Almonaster Avenue. The DA's office had refused those charges due to insufficient evidence. No witnesses, no forensics, no video. Now here she was again. The Shamrock Bar and Grill received a cease and desist order from the New Orleans Fire Department following the incident. The bar is shut down. Councilman Joe Giarrusso confirmed the action. A community memorial was created for Raven Francis at gunmemorial.org. Shanti Mark, Devon Twin Davis, and Jomar Gliz Walsh were all charged with second-degree deletion in count 3 of the December indictment. Davis and Walsh were connected to the attack through the SUV and coordination that night. 11 days after the demise of Raven Francis, Davis, Taylor, and Walsh opened fire on 3rd Street directly adjacent to Kipp's Central City Academy. 2 targets, more than 30 bullets. Both victims survived. Counts 4 and 5 of the indictment. 2 counts of attempted second-degree deletion. Kipp Central City Academy serves nearly 900 students, pre-K through 8th grade. The shooting happened in their neighborhood, near their school, during a time when children and staff could have been present. Think about that number, 30+ rounds. That's not a handgun trigger being pulled repeatedly. That is a weapon modified to fire automatically, the exact kind of Glock switch technology that gave this gang their name and their firepower. A DeAndre Godin put it plainly. It puts all of us together to work towards a common goal, returning that sense of dignity to New Orleanians who just want to walk down their street or take their children to school without being caught in a hail of bullets.
The indictment also alleges Carlos Taylor was allegedly involved in an armed robbery in August. Less than 2 weeks later, he was arrested for his alleged role in a shooting. After that, Taylor escaped from court and allegedly carjacked a woman and was on the run for days. He was captured in Baton Rouge.
Carlos Lost Taylor was facing serious time. Armed robbery, attempted deletion twice. He was 17 years old and looking at the kind of charges that end careers before they start. So he decided to run. After his arrest for the Kipp Academy shooting, Taylor was in custody in Orleans Parish when he escaped from the courthouse. Not a prison break, not a late-night escape from a cell. He walked out of court. Then he made it worse. Taylor carjacked a woman, took her vehicle at gunpoint, and disappeared. What followed was a multi-day manhunt that stretched across Louisiana. Law enforcement from NOPD, Louisiana State Police, and other agencies were looking for a teenage gang member who had just committed a new felony while running from a murder-adjacent case. They found him in Baton Rouge. As one investigator described it, "This is the kind of stuff you see in movies, but it's the reality NOPD has been dealing with." Taylor was brought back to face not just the original charges from the indictment, but new charges: escape from custody and carjacking. His case is now among the most complex of the 4 defendants, a teenager with a stack of violent felonies, a dramatic escape on record, and trials pending through 2026. Carlos Taylor was 17 when all of this started. He was 17 when he committed armed robbery with Davis. He was 17 when those 30+ bullets flew near a school full of children. And he was 17 when he ran from a courthouse and grabbed a stranger's car. In New Orleans, That kind of escalation in that kind of time frame is what gets the district attorney to call a press conference.
Tonight, WDSU has obtained grand jury indictment documents identifying 4 alleged members of a notorious gang prosecutors say is responsible for several high-profile crimes, including murder. But these 4 individuals, police say, are just part of a larger effort to track the Glock Boys gang and shut down its operations.
December 19, 2024. Orleans Parish District Attorney Jason Williams stood at a podium and announced something that stunned even the experts. A RICO indictment. 4 defendants. 6 counts. Built in 4.5 months. Raphael Goyenich of the Metropolitan Crime Commission didn't mince words. This is unusual for a RICO case to be put together as quickly as this. That's an understatement. RICO cases prosecutions under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act typically take 2 to 5 years to build. Federal cases, years of surveillance, wiretaps, grand juries, the whole apparatus. D. Williams and his team built this case in the time it takes most prosecutors to organize their evidence files. How? The Glock Boys documented themselves. They posted on social media. They filmed their activities. They bragged online. Every post, every video, every digital interaction became evidence. Investigators didn't need years of wiretaps. The gang was broadcasting their own criminal enterprise in real time. RICO requires prosecutors to show an enterprise, an ongoing organized criminal structure. The Glock Boys handed them one on a platter. Auto burglaries to steal weapons. Robbery to fund operations. Coordinated shootings with multiple members playing different roles: drivers, shooters, coordinators. Escalation over 5 consecutive months with identifiable members at each step. Assistant District Attorney Andre Godin, the screening division chief who led the prosecution, explained the strategy. We had a very clear picture of just how violent this group was and just how pervasive their activity was over the summer of 2024. The case wasn't built by one office. NOPD provided the ground-level investigation. Louisiana State Police contributed resources and coordination. Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office covered the gang's secondary territory. The ATF Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives was brought in for the weapons crimes, specifically the illegal Glock switches and stolen firearms. ADA Godin was direct about what this represents. This is not in a silo. It is not separated by agency, vision, or unit. It is collaborative. D. Williams was even more pointed. We are coordinated, and we are strategic, and we are looking for the next set of violent individuals that are wreaking havoc. He also said something that cut through all the political noise. We're all on the same team. Doesn't matter whether you are Republican or Democrat, black or white, rich or poor. This is New Orleanians against the shooters. As of May 2026, here's where each member stands. Davon Twin Davis charged on 5 counts. Armed robbery, deletion, 2 counts of attempted deletion, and RICO. Trials ongoing through 2026. No sentencing yet. If convicted on the RICO count alone, he's looking at decades. Jomar Gliz Walsh charged on 4 counts. Deletion, attempted deletion, and RICO. Same position as Davis. Trials ongoing. His role in both the Shamrock Bar murder and the school shooting places him at the center of the most serious charges. Shanti Mark charged with deletion and battery with a dangerous weapon. Her trial is pending. She is a mother of 4 children between the ages of 3 and 7. She had a prior charge that was refused by the DA's office in 2024, a decision that looks very different in hindsight. The DA's office has never publicly addressed that prior refusal in the context of the Shamrock Bar case. Carlos Lost Taylor faces the original indictment charges plus escape from custody and carjacking. His case is the most complicated of the 4. He was 17 when the crime spree began. He is the youngest member of the group, and he is now the defendant with the longest list of charges. As of May 2026, here's where each member stands. Devon Twin Davis charged on 5 counts. Armed robbery, deletion, 2 counts of attempted deletion, and RICO. Trials ongoing through 2026. No sentencing yet. If convicted on the RICO count alone, he's looking at decades. Jamar Gliz Walsh charged on 4 counts. Deletion, attempted deletion, and RICO. Same position as Davis, trials ongoing. His role in both the Shamrock Bar murder and the school shooting places him at the center of the most serious charges. Shanti Mark charged with deletion and battery with a dangerous weapon. Her trial is pending. She is a mother of 4 children between the ages of 3 and 7. She had a prior charge that was refused by the DA's office in 2024, a decision that looks very different in hindsight. The DA's office has never publicly addressed that prior refusal in the context of the Shamrock Bar case. Carlos Loss Taylor faces the original indictment charges plus escape from custody and carjacking. His case is the most complicated of the 4. He was 17 when the crime spree began. He is the youngest member of the group, and he is now the defendant with the longest list of charges. The open warrants. At the December 19th press conference, D. Williams was explicit. The indictment of 4 people does not mean the Glock boys are finished. Additional warrants are outstanding. More arrests are coming. The software analysis puts it plainly. The dismantling of the Glock boys' New Orleans hierarchy isn't finished. With more warrants outstanding and trials set to continue through 2026, the city is watching closely to see if these high-pressure tactics actually lower the deletion rate or just create a vacuum for the next group to fill. That last question is the one nobody wants to answer. RICO cases dismantle organizations. They don't erase the conditions that create them. New Orleans overall saw a 26% drop in crime in 2024 compared to 2023. That's real progress. But the Glock boys operated in the space that remains concentrated, fast-moving, and violent. No drug corners to disrupt. No hierarchy to flip. Just a group of young men with stolen guns, social media accounts, and nothing holding them back. The model D. Williams used here, rapid RICO built on digital evidence. Multi-agency from day one is already being studied as a template for future cases. The Metropolitan Crime Commission called it unusual. Law enforcement across Louisiana is taking notes. Raven Francis doesn't get to see any of it. She was 29 years old. She left behind 4 children. She was at a bar on South Carrollton Avenue at 3 in the morning, trying to have a night out. She has a memorial at gunmemorial.org, paid for by a gun violence prevention organization. That's the cost. That's what the Glock boys left behind. The Glock boys ran New Orleans for 5 months. 5 months of auto burglaries, armed robberies, a mother of 4 shot dead in a parking lot, 30 rounds fired near a school full of children, a teenage gang member escaping from a courthouse and carjacking a woman in broad daylight, and then a district attorney who put together a RICO case faster than almost anyone in this state has ever seen. That's the story of the Glock boys. If this video gave you the full picture, if you learned something, hit that like button right now. It takes 2 seconds, and it means everything for this channel. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit subscribe. We drop gang arrest breakdowns, RICO case deep dives, and crime stories that the cases featured in this documentary paint a troubling picture of modern gang activity in Louisiana. What once may have been isolated neighborhood conflicts have evolved into organized criminal enterprises tied to drugs, social media influence, interstate trafficking, and deadly retaliation cycles. From federal RICO indictments in New Orleans to drug trafficking investigations in Bogalusa and violent gang crackdowns in Baton Rouge and Shreveport, authorities continue trying to dismantle networks they say are fueling violence across the state. But even with arrests, indictments, and long prison sentences, the larger question remains: can law enforcement truly stop the cycle? Or will new groups continue rising to replace the ones taken down? As communities across Louisiana continue dealing with the impact of gang violence, addiction, and organized crime, These investigations serve as a reminder of how quickly streets can change when power, money, and violence collide. This has been a look inside Louisiana's gang indictments, drug operations, and criminal networks, the stories behind the headlines, and the reality unfolding across the Bayou State.